Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, where today we're featuring a replay from, I believe, Norwegian, and I'm going to catch all kinds of shit if I've gotten that wrong, World of Warships and War Thunder live streamer ClydeThaMonkey. Bonus internet brownie points to anybody who's old enough to understand where the reference for that name came from. Right turn, Clyde. Clyde is sailing the brand new Japanese Tier 7 battleship, the Hyuga. It's an Issei class battleship. It did actually exist. Isn't it just amazing what you can do when you concentrate on nations that did actually have navies? You don't have to pull designs out of your arse and make shit up. Although, I confess it can be interesting to see some what-if designs. But surely it's better to actually implement ships that existed before you start making stuff up. But yes, the Hyuga, an Issei class battleship. I believe the second of the Issei class battleships, built in 1918, too late for World War I. By World War II, after the devastating Japanese losses at the Battle of Midway, she was rebuilt not quite as an aircraft carrier. She's armed with 6 double 14-inch gun turrets, which is the configuration that Clyde is playing here. Post-Battle of Midway, however, the rear 2 turrets were removed and she was equipped with a flight deck. It was intended that she would be able to operate a squadron of float planes, although lack of aircraft and pilots meant that she never actually flew aircraft off her flight deck in combat. She did actually technically survive World War II. In 1945 she was in reserve and she was hit and sunk in harbour by American airstrikes. Rather than salvage her, however, she was scrapped in 1946. So what we're seeing here is the 1934 refit version of the Hyuga, where she was modernised after her initial post-First World War build. 6 gun turrets, 2 14-inch guns per turret. This can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing, because it means she doesn't have all of her eggs in one basket. If you're in something like the Graf Spee, for example, and you have one of your gun turrets knocked out, you've just lost 50% of your firepower. That's not an issue when you have your guns spread around as many turrets as this. The downside is that turret firing angles are always going to be awkward for some of those turrets, and usually in a design like this, the Fuso suffers from the same problem. It's the central turrets, because there's just so much superstructure forward and aft of those gun turrets that you can find it very difficult to be able to get all of those guns firing without exposing an unhealthy amount of broadside to return fire. As a First World War design, despite a mid-1930s refit, she's also not a fast battleship. She's not as slow as some of the Americans, but with a top speed of 25.3 knots, she's definitely not quick. She also has terrible concealment of 16.84 kilometers, and ooh, nice citadel. Oh, it is a Pensacola, which, yeah, it's difficult to hit a Pensacola with armor-piercing shells and not citadel it. And there's Clyde's first kill. What were we talking about? Oh yes, concealment. Yeah, concealment's pretty bad too. With a surface detection range of 16.84 kilometers and a terrible air detectability range of 10.46 kilometers, and of course she's tier 7, not tier 8, so that limits what you can do about it. You can of course use the concealment expert skill on the captain, but because she is tier 7, that means she of course does not have access to the tier 8 or higher concealment module. And of course, every time she fires one of these 14-inch guns, the detectability range blooms out to the maximum range of the guns, which is 20.3 kilometers. So when you're sailing the Hyuga, you pretty much have to plan your strategy around more or less be invisible all the time. Curiously, she does have a lot of secondaries, more so than most other Japanese battleships at this kind of level. She has 8 127mm gun barrels, but she also has 16 140mm gun barrels. The range of the secondaries, however, is typically Japanese, 5.6 kilometers, and even if the commander skill rework hadn't gutted the viability of secondary builds, and it has, you still wouldn't want to be investing captain points in secondaries on the Hyuga. Now, something that you need to bear in mind about this battle in particular is that it's a standard battle. Standard battles don't happen too often, they're usually domination matches. But there are a couple of things that are particular to standard battles that I feel it's worth pointing out for the benefit of those of you who might not realise that there's an actual difference, and certainly if you don't actually play World of Warships, but you do watch my World of Warships videos, and I know there are a fair few of you out there who do fall into that category, so just bear with me while I explain the major differences between a domination battle and a standard battle. So in a domination battle there are a number of different cap circles. In a standard battle there are only two, each team's bases. You can win a standard battle by capping the enemy base. Once that happens, the match ends, regardless of what the points score, regardless of how many ships are left alive. It's a bit like World of Tanks in that respect. You cap the enemy base, you win. Probably shouldn't really be too surprising that World of Warships took a lot of its initial cues from World of Tanks. It was the template upon which World of Warships was based, after all. That's not the only way you can win, of course. As in the domination battle, you can also win by destroying all of the enemy ships, or if neither base has been capped out and the match timer expires, the team that has the most points wins. The team that has the most points at the end of the 20 minutes is usually going to be the team that's got the most kills, because unlike in a domination battle, you don't have capture points flipping control between the two teams and therefore dictating how many additional points each team does or doesn't have coming in, because there are only two cap circles in a standard battle. As you can see at the moment, Clyde's team do have a very slim points lead. Both teams have sunk 2 ships, but the enemy team have sunk 2 destroyers, and Clyde's team have sunk 1 destroyer and a cruiser, the Pensacola, that Clyde killed earlier. And cruisers are worth more points than destroyers, which accounts for the very slim disparity in point score between the two teams, despite the fact that both teams do have 2 kills. Where you also get points in a standard battle is that for as long as there are no enemy ships inside your cap circle, both of those bases contribute a slow and steady trickle of 2 points to each team every couple of seconds, but only for as long as there are no enemy ships inside those cap circles. And that is going to be very, very important. Now, I mentioned earlier that ships like the Hyuga here, with multiple gun turrets spread along the entire length of the ship, can have problems bringing all of those gun turrets to bear on a target without showing way too much broadside in return. And that is kind of true of the Hyuga, except when you're engaging an enemy to your front. At the moment, Clyde is definitely giving way too much broadside to this Iron Duke, but while the Iron Duke's just fired, and after getting all of his guns away, he starts turning in and closing the angle. Yet the Hyuga, when it's engaging a target to the front, is still able to get all of those guns firing without giving too much broadside up in return, as we're going to see here. Shots out, that's all of the gun turrets. And as Clyde pulls the camera back, you're going to see he's not actually given that much broadside at all. In fact, he's just about perfectly angled. Looks like the Iron Duke is trying to recover some health. And the Iron Duke's in a terrible situation here. He's got a Synop closing in, and the Synop's on with 16-inch guns. But the Iron Duke's doing his level best to angle against them. The problem for the Iron Duke, of course, is that if he tries to turn away, he will be obliterated. But then again, well, it doesn't really matter. And again, even though the Iron Duke wasn't actually shooting at Clyde, if he had been, I'm fairly confident that Clyde would have suffered minimal damage, aside from any shells that hit his superstructure. Anything hitting his belt at the kind of angle that he was presenting towards the Iron Duke would almost certainly have bounced. Enemy Scharnhorst up ahead seems to be pulling a U-turn, doing a bit of map border surfing, and now it's the turn of the Synop, like the Iron Duke before him, to bite off a little bit more than he can chew. He's given way too much broadside at way too short range to the California, who's coming around the corner. But then again, the California's kind of doing exactly the same thing to Clyde, who's already firing his guns in anticipation. And I was extremely surprised to see the California survive this encounter. The Synop, of course, forced to sail that course in order to avoid the torpedoes fired by the enemy destroyer, but that just ensured that he got annihilated by the combination of fire from that California and the Königsberg over there. So the enemy team have just gone ahead. Clyde, of course, not dumb enough to follow the Synop, because the Königsberg has torpedoes, and he is inside torpedo range. and takes the Königsberg out, a notoriously poorly armoured cruiser that can be overmatched and citadeled from just about any angle by just about any battleship. The kills are once again even with the enemy team, just before having knocked out one of Clyde's team's cruisers, but the balance of the points is still in Clyde's team's favour, again by a very, very narrow margin, and mostly because the enemy team have lost 2 cruisers compared to Clyde's team's 1. The California, still showing broadside, again by some miracle manages to avoid being deleted, and then Clyde's team loses a Koenig, a tier 5 battleship. So again, the enemy team go ahead on points. And then they go even further ahead on points when the Königsberg on Clyde's team managed to eat a whole bunch of torpedoes. The California still doggedly refusing to sink, despite still showing all the broadside. Clyde, third time lucky. I mean, he's not doing an insignificant amount of damage to the California, but these are the standard class battleships. They tend to have very heavily armoured citadels and virtually no armour anywhere else. Team, a little help here, please? Come on. Fantastic. Nice. Friendly Miyoko managed to finish off the California. Okay, both teams have lost a significant amount of ships at this point. All the enemy teams seem to have left over here is the Scharnhorst and that, how do you pronounce the name of that thing anyway? Scania? I don't know. The IKEA boat. But just when it looked like Clyde's team had the upper hand over on this side of the map, a New Orleans class cruiser appears just to the south of the Scharnhorst. And that destroyer is undoubtedly going to be causing Clyde some worries. Although they do have aircraft carrier support over here, something that is no doubt proving to be a consistent annoyance to the captain of that destroyer as he keeps getting spotted. Although he's gone undetected for the moment. And aside from the carrier, the only real support that Clyde has over here is the Miyoko, who finished off the California. Clyde's not entirely sure he likes those odds. Not with the New Orleans spamming him with high explosive as well, and there's the Scania, once again spotted by the friendly carrier. And despite the fact that the New Orleans is just begging to be citadeled, Clyde really does need to deal with this destroyer, who is once again spotted by friendly rocket attack planes. And yep, here come the Scania's torpedoes. It looks like Clyde is probably going to eat 2 of those. Could have done without the damage. Could have definitely done without the flood, especially since his damage control is currently on cooldown. Again, the New Orleans, a very, very tempting target, but the destroyer needs to die. On the bright side, Clyde is guaranteed air support here because the destroyer is making a beeline for the carrier, and the carrier is not going to stand for that. Oh, come on, yep. It was almost inevitable at that point. Hammered that destroyer down to such low health, a single rocket strike was going to kill him. And Clyde, in chat, thanking the carrier for his support. Unfortunately for Clyde, the IKEA boat managed to get his torpedoes away. Did we mention how quickly those Swedish destroyers reload their torpedoes? And Clyde takes another 2. So now he's flooding, thanks to the torpedoes. He's burning, thanks to the high explosive spam from that New Orleans. And he has to wait 6 seconds for his damage control to come off cooldown. He's probably hammering the R key right now, and there it is. Damn, son. That was kind of close. On the bright side, he's no longer visible. He's got an island between himself, the New Orleans and the Scharnhorst, and he's got time to let his heel work its magic. By the way, I've just noticed, I'm really sorry about this. I've just noticed that the Hyuga has a main battery reload booster. Probably something that I should have mentioned at the start of this video. But, well, I'm being crap, so you don't have to. But something else that is worth pointing out, again peculiar to standard battle, is that the scores are now exactly even. Both teams have 460 points. Because both teams have sunk the exact same type and number of ships. 3 battleships, 2 cruisers, and 2 destroyers. Now we just saw the Scharnhorst sneaking in between the channel amongst the islands up ahead. Not pulling a U-turn as we thought earlier, but he's up to something. He's also getting hit by well, he's not getting hit by torpedo bombers. I suspect the torpedoes don't have time to arm in that narrow channel. And also the Scharnhorst's anti-aircraft guns are not that bad. And the Weser is only a tier 6 carrier, and it is running depleted squadrons. And oh, there's the New Orleans. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Fire them if you've got them. I suspect this is going to be an ex-New Orleans. Oh, wow. Really? I demand a refund. Clyde, if I were you, I'd be writing a sternly worded letter of complaint to your Member of Parliament, or whatever the Norwegian equivalent is. Actually, Jingles, that would be the Storting, the supreme legislature of Norway, established in 1814 by the Norwegian Constitution. Yeah, I knew that. Oh, come on. Well, the New Orleans was angling away, I suppose, and these aren't 16-inch guns. Oh, enemy team just went ahead again. Clyde's team just lost a Budyoni, so they're down another cruiser. Clyde paying particular attention to where and what that Scharnhorst is up to. Angling away from the Scharnhorst, also ensuring he gets the maximum number of guns shooting at the New Orleans. And oh, come on, seriously? He's taking hits from the Scharnhorst secondaries. Oh, it's a secondary spec Scharnhorst. Well, not a terrible idea, I suppose. I believe if you put enough points in, you can get the Scharnhorst secondaries firing out at a range of about 9 kilometres. But he needs to finish off that New Orleans. Not least of which because it's one less ship shooting back at him. But it will also, and he's got him, equalise the scores. Again. But what's the Scharnhorst up to? Because he's now angled away from the Scharnhorst, and the Scharnhorst only has 283mm guns. And it looks like the Scharnhorst is backing up into cover behind the island so he can concentrate his fire on the Miyoko, who is spamming him with high explosive shells, except he's still shooting at Clyde. Reasonably effectively too. And then the Scharnhorst seems to change his mind. It looks like he's ignoring the Miyoko, and he's coming after Clyde instead. And I guess that kind of makes sense, because if you look at the Miyoko's position on the map, the Scharnhorst doesn't really have good shots at Miyoko. And Clyde's in open water, and armed with 283mm guns firing armour-piercing shells, it's difficult for a Scharnhorst to handle an angled heavy cruiser. I mean, Clyde is armed with 356mm guns, and you saw the problems he had dealing with an angled heavy cruiser like the New Orleans. Plus, the Scharnhorst coming after Clyde like this, he's faster than Clyde, so Clyde can't run away. And he's managed to put an island between himself and the high explosive span that was incoming from the friendly Miyoko. So this does kind of make sense. He is getting dropped by the carrier though. But, well, again, it's just a tier 6 carrier. And airdrop torpedoes don't do as much damage as ship-launched torpedoes. And this is where the Scharnhorst makes another curious decision, because he's turning to angle in against a further air attack. Unfortunately for Clyde, because he was dealing with a nose-in Scharnhorst, he had loaded high explosive. So he's doing some damage, but he was robbed of the opportunity to do a lot of damage by the fact that he had the wrong type of ammunition loaded. Unfortunately, the enemy team have gone ahead again, after sinking the last surviving battleship on Clyde's team that isn't Clyde. The Scharnhorst, now suffering from repeated air attack because he's managed to get so close to the carrier, who's only about 6 kilometres away from him, does however display some pretty good situational awareness here as he slows and comes to a complete stop, almost in perfect cover behind that island. Aware that Clyde has probably reloaded the armour piercing, he's showing an awful lot of broadside, and he doesn't want to get spanked. Clyde fires anyway, but he's only really got the bows to hit, and manages to completely miss. To be fair, the Scharnhorst really was not showing an awful lot of skirt there. So the Scharnhorst's in a good spot. The enemy team are 100 points ahead, and there's only a minute of this game left. All the enemy team have to do to win is for the next minute, nothing. Oh, I'm getting a funny sense of deja vu. And the Scharnhorst, who've been doing so well up until now, oh, really? Yep, really. There's now less than a minute left, and both teams have exactly the same amount of points. This could end in a draw. And then, disaster strikes. The enemy New York slips into the cap circle, which means Clyde's team no longer have any points coming in, and the enemy team slips ahead once again. But the New York has made a critical error. We can see you. Clyde's team go ahead on points in the last 10 seconds of the match. Far too late for the enemy team to do anything about it. And so with 6 kills, and sadly no Kraken Unleashed because it's a test ship and you can't earn medals on test ships, but with 6 kills, that's a win for ClydeThaMonkey in the Imperial Japanese Navy World War I, but modernised in the 1930s and saw service in World War II battleship, the Hyuga. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.